Come on, Doc. It's getting late. I'm not sure I've ever had a field watch that lasted as long as whatever you're doing right now, the clone guardian groaned. He lightly dinged his helmeted head against the metal cover over one of the many arrayed supercomputing ports that were lined up, going out for miles in either direction. They were stacked in rows, with hallway space between them for engineers and technicians to access them. Dr. Sheena ignored Bucket, working from her chair, which she had parked nearly within one of the maintenance alcoves. Doc, I'm starving over here. Can you at least explain to me what you've been doing for the last, 12 hours? I'm not used to being around someone not talking to them, Bucket whined. Sheena took a deep breath, first in and then slowly out, though her fingers did not cease their tapping, and her eyes, bloodshot and intense, did not blink. Before her were data streams and hollow access points, each laid out and scrolling past at simultaneous interludes which she had set. 8 of her digital proxies were maneuvering within the system, operating at various levels, and all at her direction. Currently, all of them were occupied, each one engaging with the security system of the Senate's communications record cache in one way or another.
I've been trying to slice into the Supreme Chancellor's private communications history,
she murmured, dry eyes darting. Bucket slumped at the news and shook his head. Why? Don't you work for the Chancellor? He asked.
We all work for the Supreme Chancellor,
the doctor said, dismissing the comment with barely a thought. Bucket crossed his arms and shook his head more vehemently. I mean, you work with the Supreme Chancellor directly, right? Can't you just ask him to let you see? He suggested. She'd almost paused and found herself laughing. It was the first time she'd laughed in days. But the laughter was not of a genuine sort.
It's because I work with him that I know that would never work. Sure, he will placate me, maybe show me something he wants me to see, but if it's something he doesn't want people to know, then I won't see it. At best, I'll be deceived. At worst, well, he'll know I know something about something he doesn't want me to know, and I'd rather not make an open enemy of my employer, much less the Supreme Chancellor,
she said. Bucket tilted his head. And the way you are choosing to not make an enemy of the Supreme Chancellor is by illegally slicing into his holo records, he asked. Sheena nodded.
More or less,
she said. But then why even bother? If he finds out you did this, you'll be his enemy no matter what you find, even if you find nothing, Bucket said. Dr. Sheena nodded and licked some sweat off of her upper lip. She knew that. Of course she knew that. Her heart was beating so fast, and had been for all of these 12 hours. She felt exhausted, but nothing she felt now could compare to what she'd felt back on the Honor Hound. Nothing could scare as much as that thing she had seen. That thing that had killed Renfi, killed Gaffin, and everyone else on that ship. That thing had not been human. She was sure of it. It had been too large, too powerful. Its eyes still blazed, still watched her from her memory, burning, kindling, judging. Its last words whispered to her in her dreams, in her idle moments, in the maw of silence.
I am an angel of death, and I have come to render judgment.
The natural question then, of course, was, for what? Judgment about what? What was it judging, and why? Why had it judged them all worthy of death? But she had that answer already, yet while she knew why, she did not know why. Doc? Asked the clone bodyguard.
Bucket, do you remember what happened right before the battle? There was a situation. One of the enemy ships had come out of hyperspace right in front of the fleet and ahead of its own forces. It was a huge ship,
she said. Bucket nodded, the back of his helmet clinking against the casing he leaned against. Though she did not turn to watch him, fingers still in a frenzy, eyes still wide as she worked. I remember, he said.
And then something happened. One of our ships broke ranks. Do you remember that?
She asked, her voice a breathless whisper, as though she feared she might be overheard. Bucket nodded again. Yeah, I remember that. Captain Kraken lost his mind and suicide rammed the enemy ship. We're almost part of the group sent to help evacuate the wreckage. If we'd been... Well, then we wouldn't have been in trouble, he said.
Good. I'm glad you know that much, but do you know which ship Kraken used to do it?
She asked. The clone shrugged as he answered. Well, I guess it would be his ship. The Honor... Hound, he started to say, trailing off, already realizing that made no sense.
It wasn't.
She confirmed for him.
It was a new ship, a modified Venator called the Be'lakor, which was given over to Ren'Phi just before the mission began. That ship was personally gifted to him by Supreme Chancellor Palpatine.
Well, that's odd, I guess, Bucket said. Sheena nodded, tapping roughly against the glass keys of her chair-mounted console.
It gets odder. I was on the bridge when it all happened. Kraken was getting our commands, was hearing our transmissions, but he wasn't responding. He chose not to respond. It was like he just...
She started to say, struggling to find the words. Just following orders, Bucket muttered softly.
Exactly. I almost want to say he was in a trance, but if you've seen the holo, then you know how precise that jump needed to be to actually hit its target. Captain Kraken was lucid, and he was at the helm, and he used all his skill to cleave that huge ship right down the center,
said the doctor. And doing that... Fragging moons of frag! Doing that started this whole war in the process, Bucket said, only realizing the implication of the act.
Yes, that's the part that's obvious, Bucket. But there's just one particular thing that does not add up, even more than all these other oddities. One thing that is pushing me to find out more, despite the obvious risk.
Sheena said. And what's that? Asked the clone.
All Republic hyperdrives have inhibitors built into them. Fail-safes that pull the ships out of hyperspace if a sufficient mass shadow is detected in the path of the vessel. These are hardwired, and undoing that safety takes time and equipment. Too much time, in fact.
Bucket paused to consider her words, but shook his head after a while. I still don't get it. The doctor sighed, breathing out her annoyance and increasing the rate of her tapping fingers.
The Be'lakor was modified for fringe space exploration. Its modifications included non-standard changes to critical systems, the shields, the crew quarters, the life support systems, the navigation sensors, and...
she said, letting the last word hang in the air. Bucket fumbled with his thoughts for a moment before gasping as the answer struck him. The hyperdrive? He asked.
Precisely! The listed changes appear to make it seem safe enough, but I'm not convinced of that, not after the Be'lakor succeeded in accurately throwing itself down the center of that Imperial starship.
Sheena said. Wait, so you think the Supreme Chancellor had already prepared that ship to be used as a suicide ram? Bucket asked, aghast at the very suggestion. Sheena did not answer. She only typed more. Bucket, however, continued. But if that were the case, then wouldn't the order to ram the ship have come from...
And now you know why I need to know. Maybe the ship had a ram feature that Captain Kraken abused, maybe he was drugged, or replaced by a separatist infiltrator, or got the order from somewhere else. But the simplest answer is often the correct one. And in this case, the simplest explanation is...
Dr. Sheena said before trailing off. A silence started then, and the clone seemed to take his position as lookout much more seriously. Sheena's hovering chair was wired to a nearby console, and while this section of the Senate's labyrinthian technical and maintenance access spaces had been utterly deserted for all the hours that they had spent there thus far, suddenly, everything seemed much less safe than it had been before, at least to the clone. Doc? Bucket said.
Yes?
She asked. I'm no computer expert, but if you actually managed to break into there, won't there be some sign that you did this? I'm sure you cannot listen to the Supreme Chancellor's personal communications without leaving a footprint. Sheena smirked and nodded.
Well, I wouldn't phrase it quite like that, but yes, which is why I'm not trying to listen to anything.
She said. Then what are you even looking for? He asked.
Simple.
She said.
A timestamp.
What? He asked. She breathed heavily and prepared herself for another explanation.
If I can see if a message was sent and get a timestamp, then I can see if it was just sent before the ramming happened. It won't prove anything, not by itself, but...
But it will be way too convenient to be coincidence, he finished for her. She nodded. But if you find out, and the message was sent, then what next? Who do we tell about something like this? The Jedi? Bucket asked. Sheena almost laughed again.
The Jedi? No, they are either in on it themselves at some level, or, if they are not, they are bound to do something ridiculous. Can you imagine if the Jedi tried to arrest the Chancellor over this? If he really did orchestrate these events, then there is no telling what else he is capable of. He could tear the Republic apart, and it would be as easy as issuing Order 66 just before his arrest.
She said. Order 66? Asked Bucket. The doctor nodded her head as she continued her work.
It's one of the 150 contingency orders that were drafted at the onset of the Clone Wars. They are supposed to be just for show, but who knows what would happen if he actually issued them,
she said. So who do we tell, if not the Jedi? The Senate? Bucket asked.
Almost,
she said before one of her screens turned blue, and then all of them followed suit. Dr. Sheena pulled her hands away from the keys abruptly as a new data stream began to fill her view, and she blinked her bloodshot eyes for the first time in too long, wanting to be sure she was reading this correctly, wanting to avoid an error at all costs. Whoa! What was that? Bucket asked, leaning in towards the alcove.
I'm in,
Sheena whispered, eyes scanning frantically. And? Bucket asked, voice tight as he came to watch over her shoulder. Her hands snapped out, tapping a key, and the data stream froze. She lifted her finger to one line, tracing under the holographic script, feeling her heart beat harder and harder as she read it again and again.
There it is,
she said at last.
A private transmission sent from the office of the Chancellor to an unmarked vendor, unmarked but within the war theater we were operating within. The message was sent only a few minutes before the ram. Frag! Only seconds before Kraken broke the formation. It's all right there,
the doctor breathed. Oh, Scrog and Scrog! Bucket moaned. So what now? He asked. The words seemed to snap Dr. Sheena back to reality, and she reached for the keys again, starting the process of covering her tracks, minuscule though they were.
We need to get in contact with the leader of the Loyalist Committee,
she said. Who? Bail Organa? Why him? The clone asked.
No,
said the Saurian doctor.
The real leader of the Loyalists. We need to speak with the only person in the Senate with the backing and backbone to even think about doing anything about this,
she said. Bucket shrugged his shoulders. And who's that? He asked.
Senator Padme Amidala,
said Sheena.
And we need to speak with her before she leaves for Axum.
Hey there, everybody. This is a fan with too much time, and I just want to say again before we continue, thank you to Steven and Nora from the Horrible Gaming channel. I think they did a great job helping voice this small interlude, and I'm hoping that you guys like that. This was actually one of the community posts that I had put up way earlier, like a bunch of months ago, in between a few videos. That was like a little secret nugget for people who are reading and paying attention to the community post to get. But it's become a little, central to what's going on. Dr. Sheena discovering this, as you saw in Beyond Axum. And so when Steven and Nora contacted me and offered their voices for an episode, I figured it was the perfect chance to kind of, patch that hole closed and enter it officially into the audio record as opposed to just having it as a text record hidden in the community section. There's one more post like that, actually, that I may very well accept, another fan voice, if anybody wants to do it, to voice that out, because it's going to be more important if we ever get to Season 2, and so it should be voiced as well. Again, it's a very small little interlude, such as what you saw here. But since we did have time to, get this little episode out and get it edited in between me finishing up the main series, I decided to put out a little Q&A to grab a few of them as to not waste this time in the aftertalk. So, without further ado, let's take a look at your questions. And the first question is from user Liam Norconk, and his question is, next video when? Well, I mean, if you don't count the one that you just got just now, which I don't expect you to, right? You mean a next mainline episode. The week-long Rumble is coming. So let me explain something. Something that keeps on happening is that, I'm writing out the different portions per episode, and at a certain point I'll be like, okay, this episode isn't feeling right, or it's a little too top-heavy, or the pacing isn't right, and I realize that it sort of requires that I spread out what I've just written for this one portion across a few episodes, and so then I have to go back and edit the previous episodes to integrate some method of the information and, thing that I just wrote, to integrate it, not patchily, but seamlessly into it. And then I have to go forward to episodes I haven't written yet to reserve space for things that I have to tell. And that just involves a heck of a lot of writing and rewriting, to the point that I'm not even comfortable sending this to anybody who would, make a little, I don't feel comfortable even sharing this around to fans who would add to it yet, just because it's still changing, even though it's getting much, much closer to completion. We're like 130 plus pages now, and we're getting very close to the end. It's looking like I'm not going to be able to conclude Season 1 by the end of the week-long Rumble. I know. Trust me, it's not that I don't want to conclude it, and it's not that I'm taking my sweet time, but there is a fine line between being concise with the many narrative lines that, I've cast out, or any given person casts out, and cutting them down with an unsatisfying amount of urgency. And I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. And, to give you an idea of all the lines I have to reel in what is effectively like 7 episodes, we have the Jedi fighting the Librarian. We have the Inquisitor doing his nefarious stuff. We have the Jedi attacking the bunker. We have the Jedi attacking the Basilica, with the clone force. Rather, Ayla Sakura attacking the Basilica with the clone force. And there are little interspersed narratives in that. We have 1313 and him, and we have to pick up with him. We have Lazarus and Major Cinder and pick up with them. We have the Commissar who's ruling over the Basilica and his side of the defense, and we have to pick up with him. In addition to that, we have Sisters of Battle, who are going to become a bit more prominent, who their narratives have to be represented as well. We have Combir. I don't know if I've mentioned Combir yet, but Combir, who was the native of Axum who decided to take up arms against the Imperium. He's got a whole thing that's got to round out. And that might not even be all of them, then there's Ahsoka, who's currently in the process of guiding a burning ship, or rather standing by while Echo guides a burning ship out of the sky. We have Anakin, of course. How could I forget Anakin? Anakin, he's opening the big metal box right now to find the prize inside. There's a lot. There's more than 7 overarching narratives And I only have 7 episodes to round it all out in. And they're already some of the longest, chunkiest episodes in the series. So I'm not quite going to be able to finish by episode 7. But I will say this, and I can say this with absolute confidence. Where you start at the start of the week-long Rumble, the place we start at is going to be vastly different and transformed from where we end at. Many things will have changed. Many things will have developed. The Battle of Axum may come to an end. We might just, like, when I say that I might not be able to finish Season 1 by the end of the week-long Rumble, I mean, like, literally, like, hit that finish mark. Because the end of Season 1 is going to involve the end of Axum and sort of a time after the end of Axum, where surviving characters are able to take in the impacts of things that had happened, so that it doesn't just end right on the climax, so to speak, but there's a wind down as well. And I may not be able to catch the wind down. I may not even be able to catch the climax, or at least not the full like climax in the last week-long Rumble, but I'll get damn close if I don't get into it. Axum may very well be resolved. Maybe it's not, but it could be. We're still within that range. But yeah, I think overall you guys are going to like it. I'm not cheapening the story. I'm not shortening it. I'm also not trying to elongate it. Like, you're going to notice certain characters come in that weren't really there before, and you might think, oh my god, fan, we can't keep adding characters to this. Yeah, like, it's a war, man, and I'm trying to represent not just, the war itself, but certain sides in the war and certain aspects of it, and there's a lot to explore. So I'm trying to catch all of that while being fair. Obviously, there's going to be, like, further naval encounters. Obviously, there's going to be, the Bad Batch is running around, and they've got to have their stuff. It's a big thing, I'm telling you. I'm trying to do it justice. I'm trying with all my might to not make it unnecessarily long, but also to not cheapen it by shortening it too quick, and for God's sakes, to not do anything resembling what, like, what D&D, not like the game, but the writers did to Game of Thrones. Definitely not trying to cut down the series like that's been having this build up just all at once, just because I have this week-long Rumble. But it is going to be intense. It's going to be very plot thick, and I think you guys will enjoy it. As for when it's coming out, I can't really give you a straight answer to that. I don't really do this as a full-time job, and it's a lot of writing. So because of that, it's just a little difficult to figure those numbers out. And I don't want to disappoint anyone nor scare anyone by going in the other direction and just overshooting a whole lot and then surprising us by saying, hey, it's a few months early, which would have meant that initial date that I gave you was worthless anyway. So patience, Liam. There shall be a day for you, for all of us, in fact. All right, so next question. Lazy Sloth. Are we going to see more Krieg? Yes, there will be more Krieg. Not a whole lot more, I don't think, in Season 1. I could be wrong. I'm still writing it all out. But the Kriegers are sort of exhausted, both physically, both literally and metaphorically at this point. But there will be more Kriegers in the series if it goes on, which I think it will. I think that my love for the universes is greater than my hate of the companies that control them, fortunately or unfortunately. So let's see here. So that was from Lazy Sloth. Next person is Darth Witch King. That's an awesome name. What inspired you to create this series of Star Wars and Warhammer? Well, I've always seen both Star Wars and Warhammer as like the grandchildren or the direct, like as the contemporary children of the Dune series. And I love the Dune series. The Dune saga, the Dune books are fantastic. And you will soon discover why. Very, very, very soon, very shortly, this month in fact, we will all be able to discover, or rediscover in my case, the absolute magic that is that story, because you gotta understand, so much comes out of this. I mean, yes, galactic empires, that all comes from Foundation, basically. Even Dune, I'm pretty sure, is inspired by Foundation when it comes to setting up a galactic empire. That being said, this really tremendous and awesome combination of the past and the future, of Jedi Knights wielding swords amidst armies holding blasters and lasers. That sort of aesthetic, that flavor, that combination of the past and the future coming together to create this new humanity, which you find obviously in Warhammer as well, in even more broader strokes. That flavor, that sort of genre, the Tolkien of that, the Lord of the Rings of that, I believe, was Dune, and I love Dune, and I love watching these things. So, for me, combining them is a lot of fun. I've always felt that Star Wars had a more compelling, and maybe even a bit wider universe, but a more compelling set of persistent characters than Warhammer did. That may change, though it hasn't quite yet. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I think that Anakin was the best character ever acted. But definitely in his different media portrayals, you can feel the compulsion of his arc, and more than just Anakin's arc, though Anakin is, of course, central to the original stuff. But yeah, that's basically what really inspired it, is just like, you have these two incredible successors of this also incredible series, and it's just fun to imagine, especially because of the nature of the two universes, what would happen if they clashed. I mean, it's not quite as fun to imagine, like, what would happen if Warhammer clashed with Star Trek. Because, frankly, they'd probably find, like, a way around it. Star Trek has actually dabbled with that, with the mirror universe, where you have the, like, in our standard universe, it's the Federation of Planets, the United Federation of Planets. And in the reverse universe, it's like, where everyone's evil, it's like the United Human Empire or something analogous to that. And basically they're just like Star Trek with a bunch of Warhammer flavor forcibly injected into the eyeballs. And it's pretty cool. They have an emperor and stuff, not the same thing as like the God Emperor, but they have one. They have a lot of the same ideology and whatnot. And I mean, the Imperium in Star Trek ends up becoming extremely antagonistic whenever it shows up, because it has the power to be. Because it can't really be, like, it has enough power to throw around so much weight that it doesn't really feel that it's risking itself by being super hostile. But the Imperium from 40K isn't really the Star Trek Imperium, because it's like, more desperate and trying to survive. So if given options to survive by humans, even if they're like these Xenos-loving humans, if the humans are so strong they can easily exterminate his planets from just their standard-ass starships, very quickly they will be incentivized. The intelligent people within the Imperium will be incentivized to broker a deal, and because of the way the Federation is, very quickly a deal will be brokered. And there you have it. So, like, the nature of those two universes aren't as compatible and cool for a mix. And the same thing with the Star Wars universe. I mean, I can go ahead and make... I don't know. It could be mildly interesting, but the problem is that just, again, the flavors of the universe don't mesh in the way. Like, for example, I could tell a story about, like, Captain Picard from TNG in Star Trek finding a wormhole that takes him to the Star Wars universe. That's fine. Fuck, there's so much Star Trek lore that backs up bullshit like that. I could easily do it. And then, we have... Captain Picard going around the Star Wars universe during, let's say, the Galactic Civil War, and his ship is packed full of all these incredible technologies that are not really very common to Star Wars, such as like transporters and food replicators and the kinds of weapons and phasers. I mean, people like to make fun of of the photon torpedoes and phasers used by the starships in Star Trek, but like, those things will blow the fuck out of most things that you can deal with in Star Wars. They outclass blasters, and frankly, they outclass most things the Imperium are throwing around too. They're just precise, deadly, shoot you in the face and almost never miss lasers that will fuck your day up really badly if you don't have the shields to stop them. And, it's ambiguous how powerful the shields in Star Trek are, but it's implied that they're really crazy, crazy amounts of strong. And certainly capable of stopping teleportation and stuff. Trust me, Star Trek has some pretty badass technology. It's just not applied in a savage way. But if we had that story, you could have some tension with the Empire and the Rebels trying to get Picard on their side and whatnot. But, Picard would very quickly join the Rebels, or not join the Empire at the very least. And even if you have, the Prime Directive, don't interfere, yada, yada, yada. I mean... how far can you really take that? You know, when Palpatine's popping planets like balloons with the Death Star. So, so that's what I mean. Those things don't combine as well. You know, those stories aren't as cool. Also, Picard would find the whole universe kind of really absurd. He'd be like, you know, how do you have this technology and you haven't solved this problem? And then people would be like, oh, and it's like, we don't think about that here because it's Star Wars and it's more like, you know, soft sci-fi. so that's one of the reasons why this jumped out at me versus another one. Okay, so I am going to try to rapid fire a few of these because I'm now doing that thing that you guys don't like where my after talk is getting as long or longer than the video that preceded it. So I'm just going to try to go quickly here. Next one is by Plans and Bag, or Plan Sandbag, it's hard to tell. Will there be any Lamenters teaming up with the Salamanders? I can't tell you, that would be spoilers. So let's see here. Casual Silver. Will we see Vader's assassin/apprentice at some point? Okay. Vader's assassin/apprentice. I mean, do you mean Starkiller? Or Mara Jade? I can't really tell you either way, because it would be spoilers, but I will say this. You're very unlikely to see Starkiller here. I'm not a fan of Starkiller. I think that he's very narratively ill-conceived, and so I don't like him very much. Also, his story isn't the most compelling story I've ever seen. Also, he makes no fucking sense. He just really doesn't fit into the canon of Star Wars very well, so I don't like him very much. So you're not likely to see him. But either way, I can't tell you. Next one is, Dat Boy. Is Abeloth the first Daemon Prince of Chaos undivided as a result of she gains powers from both the light and the dark side? Yes, I can't tell you that. That would be spoilers. However, I will say this. If you're following my interdimensional math as for like how this universe works, yeah, Abeloth is an interesting thing there. You know, imagine a Daemon Prince being created without Chaos Gods to do it all for you. Sort of like what Abeloth is analogous to. Next one is Joshua Seagraves. Will we see more Jedi die? Ha 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 ha. You will see. So, Plan Sandbag. Hey, there you are again. Do you listen to A Vox in the Void? No, I don't. I don't know what that is. Plan Sandbag again. What is your opinion on Battletech, and would you make any stories for it, especially crossovers? Because I've been looking for it off and on. I don't know Battletech very well. I think I used to know more about it, but not enough to make a crossover. Jeff2146. How many Jedi have died so far attempting to liberate New Cadia? Ooh, wow, okay. A lot of Jedi. About like over, I think at least over 5,000 Jedi have attacked New Cadia, rather Axum, and well, let's just say that more than a few hundred have died at this point, and you'll find out how bad that is at later points. So, let's see here. No one. Interesting way to spell that. Who were the precursors? Where did they go? Why did they build this crap? Daxter from Jack and Daxter series. Is that a question for me? I don't know how to answer that. However, I'm sure that there will be people asking that. Let's see. Sam. Will Darth Maul and Savage Opress have a role to play in your story? Savage Opress is already dead in this story. However, Maul will definitely have a role to play. Still from Sam. Where will the Confederate capital world be now that Raxus Secundus is destroyed? That is spoilers. You'll have to wait and see. And finally, how many Jedi have been killed on Anaxis so far? Anaxis, interesting. On Anaxis, not too many, because not too much fighting is happening on Anaxis. It's mostly on Axum. So let's see here. Mr. Shadier, which Chaos God do you think would have the easiest time spreading in the Star Wars setting? Nurgle. I think that Nurgle is going to be the most tempting of all of the Chaos Gods by far. And if we're saying that Chaos Gods spread by faith and not just by action, which they also spread by action, but like faith is supposed to be a big deal, direct worship is supposed to bolster that a whole bunch, you know, I'll say this, maybe not Nurgle because Bacta is so readily accessible, or at least it seems that way, but the promise of immortality, much less just, liberation from pain and disease, but the promise of immortality would be a big one. You think that the Sith would be all for Khorne, but only a few Sith would really be for Khorne. And really not the big ones. Like, only a few Sith, and not the Dark Lords of the Sith. Almost all the Dark Lords of the Sith would be unanimously either Tzeentch, or, more likely than anything else, Nurgle. Why Nurgle? Nurgle gives you the most autonomy. Nurgle is the most straight up with you, which means that Nurgle himself is the easiest to try to manipulate, which is something they would try to do. And on top of all of that, it's just about the immortality, baby. I mean, you can't beat it. The Sith already don't care about looking corrupted and looking all rotted out from the Force. So, Nurgy, all day Nurgy. That would be a lot of Sith's first choice, just because it gives you that immortal life and doesn't threaten you as much as, like, trying to work with Tzeentch does. Where Tzeentch is like, oh yeah, I don't enslave you. Go ahead and work for yourself if you think you can, but we're all slaves to fate. And it's like, what's what? There'd be a lot of Sith that don't want to fuck with that. So I think that would be the big one. Let's see here. I'll do one more. CNLBNMNC. Let's see. Given that the Jedi seem to think all the Imperial Psychers are Darksiders, then given the slim chance they'll ever show up here, what would a Grey Knight's psychic essence look like to them? They literally have the ability called Feared by the Warp. Would they appear as some kind of blinding pillar of light, some kind of towering black inferno, plus considering what a librarian can make a lightsaber bleed and explode? Alright, so here's the thing, okay? So understand this. So it's hard for me to explain it. Actually, I can't. There's just not enough time left because I'm already so far past how much time I normally allow myself for these recordings, in proportion to how much video you guys get. So I'll try to sum it up really quick, and I'll have to expound upon it in a later video. But the will of the Force is inverted in the Warhammer 40k universe. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. The will of the Force is inverted in the Warhammer 40k universe. Basically what that means is that here, the Jedi believe in following the will of the Force. Okay, I have to explain the light side and the dark side. Fuck, this is such a big rabbit hole. Alright, super simple. There's a good case to be made that... fuck, okay, there really isn't enough time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to skip this question just because I don't have enough time to go into it. Alright, I'll answer one more question. Party K Kimnaski. Kaminsky. 1. Are there possibilities of Space Marines of other soldiers tell their story of heroes like Dante, Macarius, and even Primarchs themselves? Yes. There is... I'm sorry, I'm getting lit up right now. Yes, there are going to be people who tell the stories of Space Marines and of Space Marine heroes and stuff in this universe. But, how many people in the Star Wars universe will be the recipients of those stories? How many will want to be the recipients of those stories? How many will care? It's all going to be in a context. But yes, definitely that the lore of 40k will get into this place from them occupying it like they are. Alright, guys. Sorry for going so long. I really try not to make these after talks longer than the video that precedes it. So, without further ado, I will say this. Have a great time. The week-long Rumble is coming soon. Try to remember what's important. Try to take care of yourself. And until next time, I'll see you later.